Now, let's head back to Gallagher Estate. We do know that the Democratic Alliance Federal Congress is currently underway. Let's cross over now. Our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila, is standing by. Aviwe, I'm sure lots to talk about, having heard what John Steenhuisen had to say in his manifesto, as well as Mpho Phalatse.
Certainly a lot to talk to. Now it's back to these constitutional amendments. It's Amendment 38 out of 70 plus constitutional amendments. But of course, the biggest talking point is what we saw some 10 or so minutes ago. John Steenhuisen, the incumbent party leader, of course, making his delivery there on why these 2,000 delegates should vote for him come tomorrow and he still be put in his place as party leader. He says, of course, he has been part of the party itself from when it was still the Democratic Party back in 1997. He served as one of the councillors for 10 years in the party itself. So he says he's got that experience on the ground, and he suggests that if he is to be re-elected as the party leader of the Democratic Alliance, he is then his biggest task. He mentioned 7 pointers, but in his biggest priority, it is making sure that the governing African National Congress dips below 50%. Of course, that would present an opportunity where he himself could end up being the country president if, of course, those coalition talks go accordingly. One of the other promises from John Steenhuisen is just tackling the communication of the party, ensuring that that top-down approach is a thing of the past and everything is communicated accordingly. But, of course, crime, also one of the key points that he says that needs to be dealt with quite effectively in the country, as it's brazen in its nature, and the burden of load shedding. Surely one of the biggest burdens in the economy currently, load shedding, something that he says he'll put to an end if he is to be elected party leader here. Of course, he's going up against the former mayor of Johannesburg, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, who noted some of what he's done both in government as well as in the private sector. We do know that he came in as the MMC of Health back in Johannesburg, highlighting the experience that he has on the ground. She has, I beg your pardon, also the experience that she has governing the biggest municipality, Johannesburg, out of all the municipalities in the country. So saying that she's got extensive experience also leading such a big municipality and coalition governance in itself, given that she was leading alongside 9 other parties. But one of the key things that Dr. Mpho Phalatse highlighted was just bridging that trust deficit. She's mentioned how she's been going on these campaigns, and one of the things that's asked by the ordinary man on the ground is, how do we trust the Democratic Alliance? That's, of course, as it's seen as a minority party serving the interests of white people, something that we spoke about in an interview that actually I had with Dr. Mpho Phalatse, saying that that's a perspective that she's hoping to change on the ground. So those were the final talking points, final speeches from both the candidates, as we're expecting then that voting to be underway early hours of tomorrow morning. And speaking to one of the presiding officers, suggesting that as early as 6 a.m. tomorrow, they'll then be voting for the top 6 leadership, and by 9 that should be concluded. But of course, tomorrow afternoon, that's Sunday, we're expecting the final outcomes and the results then to be announced of those top 6 leadership positions. We know already that 2 of those positions are uncontested. One of the federal chair, where Helen Zille will still be reinstated as the federal chair, but of course also the other chair of the position, I beg your pardon, of federal finance chair. That's the position that Dr. Dion George holds, and it's one of those that are uncontested. But the leadership that emerges here, Heidi, is the leadership that is going to take the Democratic Alliance into next year's elections, a very crucial election if the opinion polls are anything to go about. We do know from some of these opinion polls that the ANC is sought to dip under that 50%. In fact, in some of what the Democratic Alliance has been telling us, it will dip under 40%. But of course, one of the issues that have been highlighted even by John Steenhuisen, admitting that they themselves as the party had a setback back in 2019 where they had a dipping of their own, but they're saying that now those opinion polls have been redone 4 years later. The party is on the up, and they're hoping then, given that they don't have much of a gap between the ANC as well as the official opposition political party, the DA that's electing its leadership here, not much of a difference. So they're hoping to bridge that gap and capitalize on it, hoping that the person that's elected here as party leader will go on then to be the person that could possibly be the country president as well.
Yes, you've extensively spoken about the two candidates and the other top positions within the Democratic Alliance, Aviwe, but I think it's important to go back to what the sentiment that you're getting on the floor from delegates, if you have been able to engage with any of them, about who they believe will be able to take the party ahead of the 2024 elections. As you mentioned, a very crucial one. The DA has not been shy to speak about how the ANC will drop below 50% and that the country needs to be governed by the Democratic Alliance.
Heidi, you'd have to just see the cheers from these 2,000 plus delegates as those two contenders of party leader were actually giving their speeches. At least 2/3, I beg your pardon, 3/4 of the delegates here were cheering for John Steenhuisen, where at least a quarter of them were cheering for Dr. Mpho. So that alone should give an indication of how the voting is expected to go. The electronic voting, in fact, is expected to go tomorrow morning. But not only that, it's the conversations that we've been having vastly in the channel, even earlier on, with the leader of the Democratic Party, Tony Leon, putting his weight behind John Steenhuisen, even other veteran party leaders that have been in the party for years. They putting their weight behind John Steenhuisen in the majority. So a lot of people are on the ground supporting John Steenhuisen, hoping that he'll come back then to lead the party into the crucial elections next year. That, of course, a lot of people, critics, citing that the ANC will possibly dip below that crucial 50% target. And, of course, that will talk then of the advent of coalition governance in the national scheme of things.
Okay, thank you so much for that comprehensive report. That is our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila at the Gallagher Estate. We'll definitely be checking in with our team who is stationed there for any developments.